When the Department of Water and Power took out both Silver Lake and Ivanhoe reservoirs from the drinking water system, we said to the community that we're just going to make it available for the community to imagine what they could do in the future with it. And we, at the same time, said we're going to underwrite that effort, the master plan effort, and we're going to open up most of this reservoir complex property. We have to keep some of it back for operations, some of it to maintain the dams. It's hard to call yourself the Silver Lake community without an actual lake. We've also provided access points going across the dam at the far end of the property, and that again is just to keep that sense of vision and excitement of what could be here, that you can actually come on the property, at least in a little discreet way, but just keep that alive, that desire to be by the water, to see what you could imagine here at the reservoir complex.
The Silver Lake Reservoir's master plan document is meant to be a vision document. It's not detailed design. It really just lays out a path for us to move forward on. We will continue to work with the community, exploring the details for each of these projects as funding becomes available. But it's an amazing opportunity that we have here to repurpose this resource.
This reservoir, the Silver Lake Reservoir, is a Los Angeles icon. And this has been around even much longer than I've lived. This is a feature of Silver Lake, and this is something that we're very proud of and something that I got involved in ever since I got elected 5 years ago.
The master plan has been a years-long process, and early on when we start a project, we really seek to understand the site, its history, its ecological as well as its cultural history, and also really understand the aspirations of the community and what they'd really like to see and do in the future.
I had a real strong sense of the involvement and the proprietorship that residents in Silver Lake had over the reservoir complex. I knew how important it was to folks. And so I wanted to make sure that once I became council member that I could play a role in shepherding a process wherein we could imagine what the reservoir complex would look like once it was returned to the public. And so here we are these years later, and the master plan process has taken place. It's no surprise to me that the involvement has been so deep, because one thing I know is that people who live here directly in the vicinity, and even a little bit beyond like I do, care a great deal about this very special place.
I think this is a passionate community, and the reservoir is the namesake of our community. People have a lot of feelings about what they imagine that the space should be, and it's everything along a very diverse spectrum. The challenge here in navigating these waters for us has been to make sure that we are creating an open and fair, community-centered process, and I think we've done that.
Well, I think the thing that we're concerned about most, being with a wildlife sanctuary, is that existing habitat might be replaced by other elements that aren't necessarily beneficial. We'd like to see this really be a draw for the community who want to be with nature and see the wildlife, but our concern is that we don't want to chase away the wildlife by putting something in place of the habitat.
Our role was really kind of a balancing act to try and get the various disparate views to come together and find common ground. We really wanted to achieve more open spaces for people and more habitat for wildlife. And I think that the master plan has done that in an extraordinary way.
We felt it was really important to reach out to the local community and the local schools specifically to engage a much broader demographic beyond what is just here in the Silver Lake neighborhood. So we had helped develop a curriculum that Thomas Starr King's Environmental Magnet used all of last year to run their magnet program around the master planning of such an enormous urban space.
So the kids came up with all types of designs. They had to present their designs, and it was part of their curriculum in class, as well as presenting to some of the boards and some of the councils. So that was a wonderful opportunity for them. They really felt as if though their voice was heard and that they had elbows at the table for the project.
We did a bio blitz where we looked at all the nature here, and we looked at the spiders and the trees, and then we learned about the history of the reservoir, And then about the master plan, we mapped out all the roads and stuff, and we decided where we want to put all the activities. Since we went to a field trip here, we ended up learning about the wildlife here and what the reservoir does for us and what it used to do. We made like models of what we'd want to see in the reservoir. We want like a butterfly garden where we can have like benches and flowers and a walkway.
We need to understand that these public spaces need to be our outdoor temples that everyone can respect and just have that spiritual connection to this very special place.
You know, in the community workshops, the public was asked what words best define the reservoir complex, and the words that came up most frequently were serenity, peacefulness, nature and natural. And so we felt that the most important part of the plan was to preserve these aspects for the community today and also for the next 100 years.
We did a survey in 2016 where we randomly sampled people from the community and we asked them a lot of questions about specific projects that they wanted to see. At the very top was this idea that the reservoir is an oasis of tranquility that gets them away from the noises and the hectic atmosphere of the city. And they wanted to get closer to the water. They wanted to bring down the fences. A phrase that we use in the report and that stuck with me is caged Eden. And people want the cage down, the fences down, so that they can see the water and experience nature more directly.
So now that we actually have a proposed design, one of the things that we've been working on is understanding the impacts of our design and also vetting it, trying to understand some of the technical implications. Because we are proposing to introduce aquatic habitat into the reservoir complex for the first time in over 100 years, it's really important for us to understand the relationship of new proposed habitat in the form of wetlands and introducing fish and other aquatic critters.
I think it's also important to note that in south of Silver Lake, that's considered a very high-need park poor area. There's one park, Bellevue Park, and it's a much loved, it's frankly being loved to death. And I think that some of those people in that community would really love to come to the reservoir to use it as a park in Silver Lake that they can enjoy. But frankly, the reservoir right now doesn't have amenities that make it accessible to the broader public. It doesn't have bathrooms, so if you have a family and you have young children, you can really stay at the meadow as long as they can hold it.
You know, I am very encouraged with the Silver Lake Master Plan, not just in the aspect of its options of what can be reimagined of these public spaces, but more the participation from the community and Evangelinos. We had over 1,500 people from the surrounding areas get involved in a group meeting. And that's not even including over 7,500 surveys that were filled out of people interested in the fate of the Silver Lake Lake. I am very much looking forward to how we intersect the wildlife and open space preservation of the Silver Lake Reservoir while making it open to the public so it is engaging and friendly.
That large of a plot of land in the heart of the city, there's a dearth of recreational space in the urban core as it is. We do a lot of walking field trips, and to have that potential showpiece right in our own backyard, I mean, we were just such unbridled enthusiasm for that. And the fact that we would also be part in our own humble way of maybe providing some ideas or input from a student's perspective and from the learning environment perspective, and you know, to have an alfresco learning center like that with a viable resource as a treasure, I mean, it doesn't come along but once in a generation, if that.
The biggest thing that this master plan has done is it has preserved and enhanced in an extraordinary way the open water and the vistas that are the defining element of Silver Lake. It really preserves what makes Silver Lake Silver Lake.
I, for a long time, have stared longingly peering through the fences, and it's a magnificent body of water, and we are truly lucky to have it in our community, and I just can't wait to dip my toes in the water.
A working document is also a living document. So we'll go for the funding that we can for these phases. And I'm very eager to begin the build out once we adopt the final master plan.